Hi, I'm Alicia Kelly. I am a cut paper and installation artist, and I have an exhibit here at the Kansas City Artist Coalition called Scratching the Surface. I have been cutting paper for about 13 years, and currently I live in Lawrence, Kansas. I have a studio in my house as well as a studio in the Wholesome building down in the West Bottoms. I started working with paper primarily in college. I was a fine arts major, emphasis in printmaking at the University of Kansas. And from there, I kind of fell in love with the paper medium as our main medium. And I really wanted to play around with taking just the 2D surface after a while, taking the 2D surface and playing around with how can I sculpt it and change it? How can I create one piece of paper that has multi-dimensions? I got into really playing around with 3D works when I was in college, and we had a visiting artist come in the print shop, and she was based out of Tennessee, and she did a lot of screen prints, which we were there then to help her cut them out. And I had never used an X-Acto blade before as a pin or a tool, and I fell in love with it. I stayed up all night doing it, and from there I began using some of her processes and playing around with it, and then finally found my own voice after a couple of years within the paper. Both of these pieces incorporate a circle, and I like to play with simple geometric shapes and kind of play with this idea of positive versus negative, almost like stencil making and with like the paper cutting. And so honestly, it's a shape that just kind of guides me. And sometimes it's an afterthought, sometimes it's what comes out. A lot of my work, I do a quick sketch on a piece of paper. It is very loose because I like evolution of pieces. So this piece on the back, I created the circle, and then I have very quick sketches in pencil of ish where I want to cut. When I am cutting paper and I am in the zone, it's more about the process than the actual end result. A lot of times, I am consciously thinking of the end, but a lot of times that's pushed out towards the finishing point. It is a meditation that, that flow where you're in, where I'm cutting, and at some point when it's been an hour or so, people believe it was an X-Acto, I can look down at my hand and it's cutting and it's deciding where to go, and it is, the X-Acto is my pen. I do cut through things. It does happen. That's a question that comes up a lot. Not as much as I used to, and I usually will glue another small piece of paper behind it where you can't see to enforce it. In my bigger work, sometimes it's even just a little bit of tape you can't see, but I like this hand cut, hand craft. I've always said a wavy line is more beautiful than a straight line. That's what I tell my students, and so I don't mind mistakes. I think that's a part of it being touched by a human. We're not robots. Titles are hard. In the past, I typically named a lot of pieces sometimes of the music I was listening to. I listened to a lot of soul and old jazz, and I got a lot of crap in school, even though it's been over a decade, and I still keep that in. Currently, these titles, some of them reflect the process or what's happening. Some of them reflect the time. The titles come after, or sometimes I'm in the middle of cutting a piece and I'm maybe watching something, a documentary, or listening to something, and there is, it seems prevalent for the piece I'm working on, and I'll do a little bit more research. So Scratching the Surface is all about, it's all about the process of, you have multi-dimensions within just one 2D piece. So you have your paper, then you have, even behind it, this colored paper is even behind that, and then I have the sculpted paper on top. And so I see scratching the surface more as a process oriented, where some of my other pieces, like Fragile Minds for Fragile Times, was at the beginning of the pandemic, and everyone was starting to isolate, and there was definitely anyone who had any mental health problems. I imagine that some of that could be, what is the word I want to use, heightened. And so I was really thinking of the communities I was around. It's interesting because I got better at my technique, because that one I did all by hand, like just guessing and then having to cut, where I ended up buying a light box, a small light box with these. So I would put the light box down, put the black piece of paper upside down, take my thin Japanese papers and put it where I wanted, and then trace and hand cut, which got a little quicker. That was just something. As a screen printer, I use a lot of light boxes for doing multiple layers. So I wanted to kind of incorporate what I know is screen printing, which is, similar to paper cutting in the terms of stencil making on a screen. These pieces are for sale here, and they're also for sale online at the Kansas City Arts Coalition website.